Beyond Light still has some secrets up its sleeve, and we're going to talk about a few of those in this here video, especially some hidden details you might not have noticed during the campaign and how that ties into a future enemy. We're also going to talk about some more nostalgic Destiny 1 content making its way into Destiny 2, as well as some updates directly from Bungie on their future games they're working on and how that's going. So, as usual, a lot of topics packed into this one video. If you'd like to support it, then you can do so by hitting the thumbs up down below until it turns blue. But with that being said, let's jump into the first topic. So I wanted to begin talking about something that happened during the Eramis fight that I think a lot of people glossed over and is kind of easy to miss. I think the game doesn't properly explain what happens in this cutscene, but I think Bungie also did it for a good reason, which will make more sense in the future. I'll admit I was a little bit underwhelmed by this ending. I know a lot of people were as well. It did seem a little bit random and cliche at times, and again, not much is explained, but I was doing a bit of digging through and watched through a bunch of times, and the first thing, which I'm sure a lot of you may have noticed, she doesn't actually die at all. If you're paying attention to her health bar, you'll notice that as it goes into the cutscene, there's still a chunk left, and then she freezes. So at no point does she lose any more health. So some Bungie designer deliberately made sure she has a chunk of health left when the fight actually ends. But more importantly, it isn't actually explained why she even freezes in the first place. And this reason is actually very important to this whole story, and it's all to do with her left arm. The thing about Eramis and her band of Fallen that are using the darkness and stasis is that none of them actually have any stasis powers. They're all using machines. Praxis, the technocrat, this guy actually made the technology to use stasis, so they're not chosen, they're not special. It's basically the same way they use the servitors to mimic the traveler that left them. They can only use stasis with the help of machines, and Eramis can barely control it, especially after we kill the technocrat. She basically loses control. So the key thing is that during this fight, when we do damage, we end up breaking this machine on her arm. You can see a sparking animation, that glowing orange sparks is happening on her arm there, and that's deliberately put in there again by some Bungie animator, and it's there for about 10 seconds before the cutscene plays. So it's a subtle detail that's very easy to miss, but shows you that the machine on her arm is broken, it's malfunctioning, which then leads into the cutscene. It's at this point, because we broke her stasis machine, that she tries to do some kind of stasis attack and then it backfires. She freezes her own arm accidentally, then it spreads throughout her entire body, and we didn't do it, the darkness didn't do it, she basically hit herself, and it's an accident because we broke her machine. The reason this is important is because it shows the main difference between her and us, because earlier on in this fight, she ends up freezing us and also our ghost, and even breaks our darkness shard, but we can still somehow break free by ourselves because the pyramids actually chose us, they gave us power. As the stranger actually says, we have this power within us. It was a little bit corny, but it is actually true, and we broke out of the ice with zero help, zero machines at all, and Eramis couldn't believe it. Later on, she freezes herself, but she has no power to actually break free. She wasn't chosen, she can't do what we're able to do and just break out of the ice. In a funny way, it's almost an exact mirror of the Ghoul cutscene and the Ghoul ending in the main Destiny 2 campaign, of course, who tried to brute force the Traveler's Light and steal it. Traveler said no, and he wasn't chosen, so it of course backfires, but this is very similar to what happens in this cutscene with Eramis, except it's the darkness. We were actually chosen, and we don't even need a ghost, we don't need a shard, we don't need anything, we just have the power, yet Eramis, who's using a machine, is unable, she wasn't chosen, and that's why she ends up frozen. So clearly she isn't dead. She has health when she's frozen, and of course she's perfectly preserved, still there, which is a great way to preserve something, just freeze it. But as a general rule of storytelling, if you don't see the enemy die, then they probably aren't dead. And even as the vendors say afterwards, like the Stranger and Zavala, they say things like she was sent to her end, she's defeated, she's gone, but none of them say she's actually dead, and they probably don't even know that she's still here, just frozen under some ice. As we're all painfully aware by playing Destiny 2, nothing dies just by being frozen. You have to then follow up by shattering it or break free like we're able to do, but Eramis has done neither. She's in a state in between both those things. One of her lieutenants in the post-campaign missions already says that she can be brought back. She's just waiting to be resurrected, and she even tries to, of course, until we stop them. So the lore is right there, basically telling you Eramis is not dead. Even though we fooled the plans this time, someone else is most likely going to break her free if she can't do it herself. So it could be the end of this season, it could be several seasons, but Bungie literally have her character on ice, and they can bring her back at any time that basically fits the story. There is also this image from Edge magazine, which has been floating around, and this does show Eramis in a completely different armor set we've never seen in-game. She looks almost like an Exo, similar to Atrax, but it would be very cool to see some kind of Exo version, like an actual threat of Eramis where she's intimidating. Like, imagine if she was the boss of the hard mode raid or a prestige mode or some kind of dungeon, hopefully more than just a story campaign boss that gets washed over. But either way, we definitely have not seen the last of Eramis. She isn't dead, she's still right here, just frozen until she long presses to break free. So next up, let's talk about something pretty big that's been happening right under our noses that hasn't been mentioned in game yet, but some of you will have noticed if you're keen-eyed. Since Beyond Light, there's actually been construction works beginning on the tower, and it's also stopped smoking. It's no longer on fire. Since we got here back in 2017, this old tower has been burning and smoking, just this big reminder in the background constantly of what the old tower used to be. I touched on this in a previous video, but this current cover artwork of the game does show a healed traveler as well as a repaired Destiny 1 tower. I wasn't sure what to think at first. Obviously, we did get the healed traveler, but now this artwork seems to make a lot more sense, seeing as in-game we can see physically they are repairing and rebuilding the old tower. Now, initially I was thinking, why would they bring back the old tower? We don't need another social space, and what will be the purpose of it? But the more I think about it, I think we'll honestly just flat out move back to this tower and leave this one, which in Destiny 2 isn't even a real tower. It's actually a makeshift base on the wall after the Red War. This one was supposed to just be temporary, and now the war is over and we're getting back on our feet. It would make perfect sense to go back, and honestly the old tower is and would be a lot better than this current one. I think at this point this tower just seems a little bit kind of empty and sad for some reason. It was a very cool tower when it showed up. It was also a surprise, you might remember. Back when D2 launched, we had no idea this tower even existed. We thought the farm was the permanent social space, and then the end of the campaign, it was a big surprise when we found out there was a whole social space on the wall that we've built. I do really love the verticality and the kind of jumping. There's a lot of puzzles and just cool things in this space, but I think the old one just feels a lot more like a real tower, and you could probably mirror the same vendor spots and have the layout very similar, but we hear Bungie always talk about wanting Destiny 2 to be an evolving world, and this is a perfect example of that. You can subtly see it in the background as it gets constructed and rebuilt, and you can kind of monitor it over time. It isn't a weekly update like Akora's Portal was, and it doesn't seem to be updating much at all. I think it's only updated maybe once since Beyond Light, but it's probably going to take a while, at least a few seasons or maybe until the year end. Development-wise, Bungie already have the assets for the tower in Destiny 2. We had the Red War campaign missions, we have the 0 Hour mission that takes place there, so the courtyard, a lot of the areas are already in the game, and you'd of course mix that with the original Destiny 1 assets, but I definitely expect they're going to change quite a few things and remodel it to make it a bit more different, and of course, parts have been destroyed and rebuilt, so it gives them a license to just do whatever they want with it. It also makes sense because we've seen that Bungie is clearly trying to merge the best of Destiny 1 into Destiny 2. And if you think about content in Destiny 1 that hasn't been brought over yet, the tower is one of those things that people always relish, is so good but isn't quite in this game. So it's one of those things that's kind of a win-win for Bungie, because the old players will get nostalgic and love it, and the new players have never even seen it, so it's new for them. And either way, people are just going to be happy about seeing a new space. And I think it would be the perfect time to kind of freshen things up. With the tower being the kind of core area you return to after 3 or 4 years, it would make sense for Destiny 2 to get a little bit of a refresh with the tower and actually go to a real one. I know a lot of people from what I've seen don't seem to be the biggest fans of this current D2 tower and definitely prefer the old one. So let me know what you think about it in the comment section. Definitely something to keep an eye on in the future. The next thing I wanted to talk about is some pretty interesting details coming from Bungie's CEO, who talked a little bit about how the company is doing, the future of Destiny, and also other games that they're working on. This was an interview done by Metro, and it is pretty rare you hear from Bungie's leadership, so definitely some noteworthy things that he did say. He talked a lot about the social elements of the game and saying how that is Destiny's kind of biggest success, which is absolutely true. It's kind of the glue that holds the game together, all the social features, and he was praising that a lot in this interview. He mentioned how social engagement has to be at the core of any future games that they make, and it's basically the secret sauce to Bungie games. He said, the first step is pretty much to make a fun place to be, the next step is to give fun things to do, and the third step, the most important part, is to make it better with friends or make it more of a social game. So it's a common thread that he said is going to be in any game when you make one like Destiny or the one that they have on deck next. Now, talking about that, we know that Bungie is working on another game that is going to be set to release before 2025. So probably somewhere around Lightfall in 2023, the game might be announced. They might start talking about it a bit more. But so far, they said they're working on incubations for future games. And apparently they're going very well. They're building teams and doing a lot of hiring. Definitely one of the most interesting things that he said is that a quarter of current Bungie employees haven't actually been to their real studio because they've been hired since March, since the lockdowns, and they haven't actually stepped foot into their real offices. It is quite a big deal because it means 25% of their company has been hired within the last 9 months, and it is very, very big. It means they're past, of course, the planning stage and probably well into development of this game, seeing as they're hiring so many people, and obviously they're not working all on Destiny and Lightfall, so you would imagine it's going towards their future projects. He also mentioned that these days there's only about 20 people in the studio at any given time, and mainly they're server engineers and security and tech engineers, just kind of keeping the game running, of course, but obviously most people are working from home. A funny part he did say is that we're very, very fortunate, so two verys there, as a studio, that the business of Destiny is absolutely thriving, he said. So a CEO's way of saying the game is making good money right now, and I'm sure Eververse has sold very well. Since the split with Activision, we don't have any earnings calls, so we don't actually know how much money they make at all. It's a complete mystery, but we do know the game has sold pretty well since Beyond Light. It was the top 2 spots on the Steam marketplace, so it's safe to say that Bungie is making good money, but of course we have no idea how the business of Destiny functions. It's all a huge mystery. He said that the main reason for splitting with Activision was, of course, for creative freedom, which they say often, and of course since then they've had to replace Activision on the publishing and the marketing and the business side of things to do what they used to do for them. Also, a big blow that he mentions was, of course, losing Vicarious Visions and High Moon Studios. These are 2 development studios owned by Activision that had a massive hand in the success of Destiny 2. I know Vicarious had a huge hand in developing the PC version of Destiny 2. So the reason the PC version is so smooth and a very, very good port is because of Vicarious. They did an amazing job with that. I think they also contributed towards the Warmind DLC, and High Moon I know contributed a lot towards Forsaken as well as Vicarious as well. So as well as Bungie, they have contributed a lot to this game. So it was definitely a big blow for them to lose both those studios. And personally, I think it makes Beyond Light a lot more impressive considering they did it without those studios, without the publisher, and of course during a pandemic with almost all their employees working from home. So I thought it was a pretty interesting insight into what's going on with Bungie and how they're actually making this game and the development side of things. So I hope you all enjoyed watching this video. If you made it this far, then hopefully I've earned a like rating down below. It helps the channel and is much appreciated. If you want to see some more content from me, you can check out this podcast episode linked on screen, or this new channel, which is full of short and simple clips from the podcast. So make sure you're subscribed to both channels. But as always, I do appreciate you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.